Hello. This is a short introduction to basic brain care. So sometimes parts of our brain can get really overactivated due to stress or worry or our emotions or due to a buildup of difficult experiences in our past. And when this happens and the brain doesn't get an adequate chance to recover, then it doesn't function as well as it should. It kind of gets stuck in a constant state of fight or flight. And over time, this can lead to quite unpleasant sensations and symptoms building up in the body, such as pain, muscle tension, fatigue, anxiety, and many other symptoms. We often take our brains for granted. We think that they should just be able to cope with whatever life throws at them. But they're not perfect and they're not machines, and they do need some basic care in order to function well. And there's lots of ways that we can send messages of care and safety to the brain. I've made some audio and video exercises for you to try. And I'll spend the next few minutes just talking about some of the theory behind those techniques. So firstly, there's breath work, and the breath is a really powerful tool in mind-body therapy for many reasons. Firstly, it's controlled in two ways. There's automatic control, which ensures that we continue to breathe, whether we're kind of focusing on the breath or not. So we can get about doing our daily activities, and we can, even carry on breathing while we're sleeping. And then there's also conscious control, so that we're able to change the rate, the depth, and the force of the breath if we put our minds to it. And the brain isn't just controlling the breath in these ways, it's also using the breath as information. So if we take slow, deep breaths, then that sends messages to the brain that we are safe, and it allows the brain to shift into a more restful state. The other reason that the breath is so valuable is that it's always available to us. It's always there, no matter what we're doing, no matter what time of day it is. And we can even use these breath techniques in the presence of other people without them knowing. So it really is a very important piece of the mind-body toolkit. And then there's mindfulness or meditation. The relationship between the brain and our thoughts is really similar to the relationship between the brain and the breath. In that, our thoughts are created automatically by the brain. They're just constantly popping up into the mind, whether we like it or not. But we can also create them consciously if we choose to think about something specific. The brain also uses our thoughts as information. So if we worry or think about the worst thing that could happen, then that shifts the brain into more of a fear state, and it prepares the body to act as if those thoughts might become true. And luckily, the opposite is also true, that we can use thoughts and visualizations to create safe experiences for the brain, shifting the physiology in the opposite direction. So I'll just lead you through a short exercise which demonstrates the power of the thoughts to have an effect on the body. So if you could just close your eyes just for a short time. And I want you to imagine that in front of you there is a juicy yellow lemon. And then I want you to imagine taking a knife and cutting it in two. And you might imagine that there's a kind of that burst of citrus juice into the air, so that you can really smell the lemon there. And then I want you to pick up one of the halves that you've cut and imagine putting it into your mouth and just squeezing the lemon juice onto your tongue. And you can open your eyes now. Now, many of you may have noticed that as you do that, the mouth instantly starts to produce more saliva. And you may even notice a slight ache or tingling at the back of the jaw that you would get if you ate something that was quite sour or bitter, like a lemon. And myself, I even sometimes get a little shudder, even just saying that exercise just out here, just a little, shudder and tension in my back that I would get from kind of bracing from tasting something sour. So it really is a good, simple example of how thoughts can rapidly change our physical state. And this is going on all the time. So if we're having a lot of thoughts that are about worrying about bad things that can happen, then the body is preparing for those things to happen, and it can lead to this constant state of kind of tension and muscle contraction in the body, which over time can build up into symptoms and conditions. So some of our thoughts are very interesting, they are very useful, they're important, and they're very productive. And then some of our thoughts are quite unhelpful. They create fear and unnecessary pressure. We can't control our thoughts and we can't get rid of them, but we can choose how much attention we pay to them. And mindfulness invites us to temporarily step back, to see thoughts for what they are, they're just thoughts, and just allow them to be present, but to practice paying attention to something else, so that we can really see that the thoughts are just part of our experience and there are other things going on that we can tune into. So whenever I talk to people about breath work or meditation, they often tell me that they've tried it and they can't do it. And they either find that the process is too difficult, or they just find it really hard to commit to doing it regularly. So I want to try and break it down a little bit, explain some of the common traps that people fall into, and suggest some ways that you can get unstuck. So the most common belief that people have about mindfulness, which makes them feel like they can't do it, is that they have to stop thinking. So this is untrue, and it's completely impossible. In fact, I don't even really see how mindfulness can work unless you're having some thoughts. And I'll explain the basic process of mindfulness to demonstrate to you why that is. So first step is that you choose to pay attention to something. So this can be anything that you can sense in the body or in the immediate environment. So it could be the breath, or the feeling of your feet on the ground, or some sounds that are around you that you can hear. Step 2 is to get distracted. So usually within a second, or if you're lucky, 2 seconds, something will happen in your mind that will distract you from paying attention to this other thing, either a thought or another physical sensation. Step 3 is to notice that you've got distracted. And then step 4 is to go back to step 1 and re-choose to pay attention to whatever it is you've decided to pay attention to. And that is it. That's all you need to do. And if you don't have that step of getting distracted, then you can't practice noticing you've been distracted and coming back. And it's that turning back and, back to what you're paying attention to that's the most important thing. That's what you need to practice. So you're learning how to consciously control your attention. So each time you have a thought, it isn't bad. You haven't failed. It's good. It's another chance to practice noticing and stepping away from it and letting it go and shifting your attention elsewhere. Another stumbling block with meditation is trying to do it for too long. It's not an endurance test. It's not supposed to be a struggle or difficult. It's just a little rest. It's a chance to offer your brain a small slice of peace and kindness. And I think to begin with that even just 5 minutes is too long. I think unless you're practiced in meditation, then I would just start with 1 minute and just slowly increase that as time goes on. Most of the exercises I've recorded are less than 2 minutes, although there are some on there that are a bit longer. And then we can also use the body itself to send messages of care and support to the brain. And this can be through self-touch, or through muscle relaxation, or through movement, mindful movement. And in the same way that the breath and the thoughts send messages of safety back to the brain, the way that we move and interact with our body also can create safe experiences for the brain to learn. So for the body exercises, I've recorded a few videos on my YouTube channel with some ideas. So before you start any exercises like this, the most important thing to do is to be clear about your intention. If you do these exercises to try and get rid of your symptoms, or with the sole purpose of trying to force some kind of change in your body, then that will just put more pressure on the brain and it will be much more difficult for it to shift states. That these practices are literally about caring for your brain on a regular basis, giving it a break, allowing it to reset, and creating some internal space. Often you will feel better and you may notice some release in the body after doing these exercises, but that is just a welcome side effect. It is not the desired outcome, and it will fluctuate and it won't always happen, and that's okay. The goal is simply to create a short experience of safety for the mind and the body to gain some balance. So, please use these links to try out the brain care practices, see which ones suit you best. Try to do at least one a day, more if you can. The more you practice, the more you'll find them to be effective if you use them in times of stress. And once you've followed them a few times, you might want to try them on your own. Just set a timer on your phone and remember the instructions and just follow them. And then you can gradually increase the amount of time that you're doing them for as you become more experienced. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and enjoy the exercises.